going gray, and they're only getting better.
All right, welcome back. This is the second half of visual aids, and we're talking about how to create really good visual aids. That's where we're going next, because we've looked at some basic principles, we've looked at categories of visual aids. Now we're going to look at how to design really good ones. And I'm going to give you 3 fundamental principles. Visibility and clarity is the first one. And this refers to the fact that visual aids should be easily visible and simple. Clarity can also be affected by the proportion of visual aid to the room or screen to the items on the screen, or even screen size to the proportion of the room. Do what's necessary to make sure everything in your visual aid is visible to all audience members. Visual aids should be easy to handle. They shouldn't weigh you down or be cumbersome. This is point number 2. They should also be strategically placed to access them without hesitation when you need them. Show them when you're ready, and then remove them when you're finished talking about them so they don't draw the audience's attention. And the third principle of visual aid design or choices is appeal. Visual aids should be aesthetically pleasing without distracting. Don't let overdone slides or giant models or some action on the stage take over and distract from your message. Now, this guy, David Phillips, authored the first tome on how to avoid death by PowerPoint. Rather than try to retell what he has already brilliantly said and made free through TED Talks, I want you to watch this video on your own time, get his 5 principles in less than 20 minutes, and apply them forever and ever to your presentations forever. I'm going to highlight a couple of additional things to enrich what he has shared with us in the next couple of slides. We're going to talk first about slide design. And the first idea is use white space on your slide. That means use the blank space to organize things and make it easy for the audience to pay attention and follow. And I grabbed these 2 visuals from a terrific slideshow that there is a link to on your PowerPoint or on your Blackboard pages. But they have organized with these dotted lines and kind of shown you how the spacing is, right? But we really need to be mindful of how we use that white space. I strongly encourage you to use a design or theme provided by the app that you're using to create your visual aid, or import one that you really, really like. That's okay too. You are not graphic designers. Don't make this harder for yourself. Use a setup that's provided for you. And I'm going to give this a name called the 5-6 rule. There's a 3-3-3 rule, a 5-5-5 rule. But what I really want you to do is 5-6. Try to keep each line of your PowerPoint or slideshow to 5 words maximum. And as Phillips, the presentation you're going to watch after this, says, no more than 6 objects plus the title per slide. So 5 words per line, 6 objects total on the slide. We need to use a sans serif font, and that means no wings. Okay, and you can choose sans serif by the title of your font. Serif fonts are terrific on print, and they are better on small screens, but sans serif fonts are better on big screens. So that's what you should be using for your presentations. And use colors that work with the contrast rule Phillips shares in his video. Check out the settings in your presentation app. Apply Phillips' contrast principle, and keep in mind that reds and greens are hard for colorblind audience members. So you want to use them only when you really need to, especially with that red, because we know that red has such a draw for people. You can also apply the psychology of color when choosing images and colors. There's a briefing on Blackboard about the psychology of color that you need to read as well. So those are a few important things about slide design. Please go back and read watch Philip's video. He's fantastic. He's very entertaining. Here's your sans serif fonts. You can see here are the serif fonts. See these little elements that draw out from the end of each letter? That's called a wing. So that's serif, the wings. Sans serif is Latin for without wings. Script and decorative are nearly never a good choice for a presentation. And another point briefly about fonts before we move on to another section is think about the size of your font. These are 3 that are strongly recommended in multiple sites and by multiple sources: Helvetica, Futura, and Rockwell. And Rockwell does have some serif, but you can see that it's very clean lines. So see how big 44 is versus 16. In our classroom, 18 to 20 is always the smallest I want people to use, but if you're in a big presentation area, you really don't even want to go that small. You just have to make the call on your own. All right, what makes a visual aid high quality, whether it's a slide or not? We've just talked about, but how do we get the most out of them? So let's talk a little bit about when we're going to use them. When we're going to use them. We use them when we want to simplify complicated ideas. That is the fundamental rule. If you have something that is complicated and you can figure out how to simplify it for the audience with a visual aid, you want to do that. When you're trying to add interest to dry ideas, which of course we do a lot in teaching, visual aids are terrific. When you're trying to add clarity to something, which means essentially you need to complement what you're saying to the audience with something visual. This is a great idea, a visual aid. When you want to make something in the speech memorable or the entire speech more memorable, visual aids are a great idea. The thing is, you want to make sure that you use the right number and combination of them. As Philip says, it's more slides, not more stuff on one slide. That was never the issue. Make sure they don't clutter your presentation. So those are some tips for when to use visual aids. Let's hit on just a couple of common mistakes. Make sure you have a backup plan in case your slides don't work, the technology fails, the power goes out, etc. You should have some version of backup, even if it's just notes that you are going to project from your diaphragm and you're using your voice. Stand where you're not blocking the view of your visual aid. This happens a lot. People don't even realize they're standing right in front of what they want people to see. Except for a brief glance at the visual aid, and this is a repeated point on purpose, always, always, always face the audience. You can just briefly glance over at your slide and then right back at your audience. If you have a model or object, only pick it up when you're referring to it. Only hold it where the audience can see it or point to it when you're referring to it. And if you're using multimedia, so you're using more than just video, or if you may be using sound or audio or a film, make sure that you've coordinated all that so that they're working well together. Your textbook points out the pros and cons of handouts, and I want to make sure that you follow those rules or risk huge audience distraction. It can really completely flop your entire message if you don't. As always, I appreciate your time. Don't forget to watch Philip's video and check out the other links on our Blackboard site. We talked today about pros and cons of visual aids. Charts, graphs, representations, models, and people are the categories. We talked about important design elements and how to get the best bang for your buck out of the visual aids that you're going to use. Be well, and thank you very much.
Only gets